National Electrical Code Section 407.3A3 requires receptacles to be placed no more than 2 feet apart along an unbroken countertop edge. A sink interrupts the countertop edge, creating a break in the countertop. Therefore, receptacles cannot be placed directly behind the sink and must be located within 2 feet on either side. If receptacles are identified directly behind the kitchen sink, this violates the 2-foot spacing rule. The reasoning that adding 2 more receptacles would not resolve the issue is incorrect. The receptacles behind the sink still violate the spacing rule. The refusal to issue violations based on the lack of examples in Article 100 is also incorrect. The code is not an exhaustive list of all possible damp locations. While Article 100 does not specifically mention receptacles over sinks as damp locations, the definition of a damp location in National Electrical Code Section 100.8 includes areas where moisture is likely to occur. Receptacles over sinks are frequently exposed to moisture from splashing water, making them damp locations. The placement of receptacles over sinks poses safety concerns. Electrical devices used near water can cause electrocution if the receptacle is not ground fault circuit interrupter protected. Even with ground fault circuit interrupter protection, there is a risk of electrical shock if water penetrates the receptacle or device. Section 210.8 of the National Electrical Code specifies where ground fault circuit interrupter protection is required. Ground fault circuit interrupter protection is required for 125 volt through 250 volt receptacles installed in bathrooms. The requirements for ground fault circuit interrupter protection have been expanded in recent code cycles. In dwelling units, ground fault circuit interrupter protection is required for receptacles serving countertop surfaces in kitchens and receptacles within 6 feet of the outside edge of a sink. This requirement applies to both dwelling units and other locations. The code provides requirements to minimize hazards. It is important to understand and apply the code requirements properly to ensure safety. First, review the relevant sections of the National Electrical Code. These include Section 210.8 regarding ground fault circuit interrupter protection, Section 407.3A3 regarding countertop receptacle spacing, and Section 100.8 regarding damp locations. Secondly, consider the specific context of the installation. Evaluate whether the location is subject to moisture or splashing. Assess whether the receptacle is within the required distance of a sink or other water source. Thirdly, enforce the code requirements consistently. Issue violations for any installations that do not meet the code requirements. Document the violations clearly and provide specific references to the applicable code sections. Fourthly, educate others about the code requirements. Share information about the importance of proper receptacle placement and ground fault circuit interrupter protection. This can help to prevent future code violations and improve safety. Fifthly, consult with experienced inspectors and electrical professionals. Seek guidance from those who have a thorough understanding of the code and its application. This can help to ensure that you are making informed decisions and enforcing the code correctly. Consider the effects of water on electrical components. Water is a conductor of electricity. When water comes into contact with electrical components, it can create a path for electricity to flow where it is not intended to flow. This can result in electrical shock or electrocution. The severity of the electrical shock depends on several factors, including the amount of current flowing through the body, the path of the current, and the duration of the exposure. Even a small amount of current can be dangerous, especially if it passes through the heart or brain. Ground fault circuit interrupters are designed to protect people from electrical shock by detecting ground faults. A ground fault occurs when electricity flows through an unintended path to ground. Ground fault circuit interrupters monitor the current flowing through the circuit and quickly interrupt the power if a ground fault is detected. This helps to prevent electrical shock. Regular testing of ground fault circuit interrupters is important to ensure that they are functioning properly. Ground fault circuit interrupters should be tested monthly by pressing the test button and verifying that the power is interrupted. If the ground fault circuit interrupter does not trip when the test button is pressed, it should be replaced. Consider the location of electrical receptacles in relation to water sources. Electrical receptacles should not be installed in locations where they are likely to come into contact with water. This includes areas near sinks, bathtubs, showers, and swimming pools. The National Electrical Code specifies minimum distances for receptacle placement near water sources. These distances are designed to minimize the risk of electrical shock. In addition to ground fault circuit interrupter protection, there are other safety measures that can be taken to reduce the risk of electrical shock near water. These include using waterproof or weather-resistant electrical equipment, installing barriers to prevent water from splashing on electrical components, and educating people about the dangers of electricity near water. Electrical safety is a shared responsibility. Electricians, inspectors, and homeowners all have a role to play in ensuring that electrical systems are installed and maintained safely. By following the National Electrical Code and taking other safety precautions, we can reduce the risk of electrical shock and prevent injuries. The countertop rule ensures that appliances can be easily plugged in without the use of extension cords, reducing trip hazards and potential strain on cords. It also promotes a safer kitchen environment by minimizing the likelihood of electrical hazards due to overloaded circuits or damaged cords. The requirement for receptacles within 2 feet of a sink is related to the interruption of the countertop by the sink. The sink is considered a break in the countertop, meaning that the countertop surface is not continuous across the sink. Therefore, receptacles are required on either side of the sink to ensure that all countertop areas are adequately served by electrical outlet. The 2-foot rule is measured horizontally along the countertop from the edge of the sink. This means that the receptacle must be located within 2 feet of the sink edge, not diagonally or vertically. The purpose of this rule is to ensure that receptacles are easily accessible for appliances used in the countertop near the sink. When inspecting for compliance with the countertop receptacle spacing rules, it is important to consider the specific layout of the kitchen. Look for any areas where the countertop is interrupted by a sink, cooktop, or other appliance. Verify that receptacles are located within 2 feet of each of these breaks in the countertop. The code also addresses the placement of receptacles on peninsular and island countertops. For peninsular countertops, at least one receptacle is required. For island countertops with a long dimension of 24 inches or greater and a short dimension of 12 inches or greater, at least one receptacle is required. These receptacles must be located within easy reach of the countertop surface. It is also important to consider the height of the countertop when inspecting for compliance with the receptacle spacing rules. The National Electrical Code specifies that receptacles must be located no more than 20 inches above the countertop surface. This ensures that the receptacles are easily accessible for appliances used on the countertop. In addition to the receptacle spacing rules, the National Electrical Code also addresses the type of receptacles that are allowed on countertops. Ground fault circuit interrupter protected receptacles are required for all receptacles serving countertop surfaces in kitchens. Ground fault circuit interrupter protection helps to protect people from electrical shock by detecting ground faults and interrupting the power supply. When inspecting for compliance with the receptacle type rules, verify that all receptacles serving countertop surfaces in kitchens are ground fault circuit interrupter protected. Ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles can be identified by the presence of a test button and a reset button. Test the ground fault circuit interrupter receptacles regularly to ensure that they are functioning properly. In addition to the National Electrical Code requirements, there may be local codes or regulations that apply to receptacle placement in kitchens. It is important to check with the local building department to determine if there are any additional requirements. The intent of the code is to ensure that electrical receptacles are safely and conveniently located for use with countertop appliances. By following the code requirements, it is possible to create a safer and more functional kitchen environment. Remember that the code is not just a set of rules, but a set of guidelines designed to protect people from harm. It is our responsibility to understand and enforce the code to the best of our ability. If you have any questions or concerns about receptacle placement in kitchens, consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector. They can provide guidance and assistance in interpreting and applying the code requirements. The area around a sink is prone to moisture, whether it's from splashing water or condensation. This moisture can create a path for electricity to flow, increasing the risk of electric shock. Even if a receptacle is ground fault circuit interrupter protected, there is still a risk of electric shock if water penetrates the receptacle or device. Ground fault circuit interrupters are designed to protect people from electric shock by detecting ground faults and interrupting the power supply. However, they are not foolproof. They can fail to operate properly due to a variety of factors, such as age, damage, or improper installation. Therefore, it's important to take other precautions to prevent electric shock near sinks, such as keeping electrical devices away from water and avoiding the use of extension cords. The presence of a backsplash does not eliminate the risk of moisture exposure. Water can still splash onto the backsplash and run down behind the receptacle. Additionally, the backsplash itself can become damp from condensation. Therefore, it's important to treat receptacles behind sinks as potentially damp locations and take appropriate precautions. The National Electrical Code defines a damp location as a location that is subject to moderate degrees of moisture. This includes interior locations subject to moderate degrees of moisture, such as some basements, some barns, and some cold storage warehouses. It also includes partially protected locations under canopies, marquees, roofed open porches, and similar locations. Receptacles in damp locations must be protected by weather-resistant covers. Weather-resistant covers are designed to prevent moisture from entering the receptacle. They are typically made of plastic or rubber and have a gasket that seals around the receptacle opening. Weather-resistant covers are required for all receptacles in damp locations, regardless of whether the receptacle is ground fault circuit interrupter protected. The placement of receptacles over sinks is generally discouraged, even if they are ground fault circuit interrupter protected and have weather-resistant covers. This is because the risk of electric shock is still higher in this location than in other locations. If a receptacle must be placed over a sink, it should be located as far away from the sink as possible and should be protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter and a weather-resistant cover. In addition to the National Electrical Code requirements, there may be local codes or regulations that apply to receptacle placement near sinks. It's important to check with the local building department to determine if there are any additional requirements. The senior inspector's assessment that the receptacles behind the sink do not pose a safety hazard is incorrect. The placement of receptacles in this location violates the National Electrical Code and increases the risk of electric shock. You are correct to identify this as a code violation and a safety hazard. It's important to stand your ground and enforce the code requirements, even if the senior inspector disagrees. The safety of the public depends on it. As an inspector, you have a responsibility to protect the public from harm. This means enforcing the code requirements even when it's difficult or unpopular. It also means educating others about the code requirements and the importance of electrical safety. Remember that the code is not just a set of rules, but a set of guidelines designed to protect people from harm. It's our responsibility to understand and enforce the code to the best of our ability. If you have any questions or concerns about receptacle placement near sinks, consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector. They can provide guidance and assistance in interpreting and applying the code requirements. Consider the potential for water to be splashed or spilled near the receptacle. Even a small amount of water can create a path for electricity to flow, increasing the risk of electric shock. Think about how the receptacle will be used. Will it be used to power appliances that are likely to be used near water, such as hairdryers or curling irons? If so, the risk of electric shock is even higher. The fact that the receptacle is located in a cultured marble backsplash does not make it any safer. Cultured marble is not a good insulator, and it can become wet from splashing water. Therefore, the receptacle should be treated as if it were located in a damp location. It's also important to consider the potential for the receptacle to be damaged. Receptacles can be damaged by water, impact, or other factors. A damaged receptacle is more likely to cause an electric shock. If you see a receptacle that is damaged, it should be replaced immediately. The National Electrical Code is constantly evolving to address new safety concerns and technological advancements. It's important to stay up to date on the latest code requirements. The National Electrical Code is typically updated every 3 years. You can purchase a copy of the National Electrical Code from the National Fire Protection Association or from other sources. You can also find information about the National Electrical Code on the National Fire Protection Association website. It is important to consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector if you have any questions about the National Electrical Code or electrical safety. These professionals can provide guidance and assistance in interpreting and applying the code requirements. They can also help you identify potential electrical hazards and take steps to mitigate them. Electrical safety is a shared responsibility. Electricians, inspectors, and homeowners all have a role to play in ensuring that electrical systems are installed and maintained safely. By following the National Electrical Code and taking other safety precautions, we can reduce the risk of electric shock and prevent injuries. Remember to prioritize safety in all electrical work. Electrical hazards can be deadly, so it is important to take precautions to protect yourself and others. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it is best to hire a qualified electrician. The code is there to protect you. It is important to always be diligent with the code.